Before time began, before the first whisper of wind or the first spark of fire, there was only water. An endless, boundless ocean stretched in all directions, dark, silent, eternal. The Egyptians called it Nun, the primeval chaos, the nothingness from which all would be born. From this infinite sea rose a single presence, Adam, the self-created one. Lonely and formless, Adam stood upon the first mound of earth that emerged from Nun's waters. His body glowed with the raw fire of existence. He had no parents, no companion, yet within him lay the seed of all creation. Adam longed for something beyond himself. So he reached deep into his own essence, drawing upon the chaos around him, and brought forth life. From his breath, from the moisture of his own body, he gave birth to Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. The world trembled as the first pair of gods separated from the loneliness of Adam. They spread across the void, filling it with breath and dew. Light began to shimmer where once there had been only darkness. But Shu and Tefnut were lost in the vast waters of Nun. For countless ages they wandered, swallowed by the shadows of the abyss. Adam's heart ached with solitude once more. In desperation he sent out his fiery eye, the blazing power of the sun itself, to seek his lost children. Through darkness and storm the eye searched, until at last Shu and Tefnut were returned to their father. Adam wept tears of joy upon their reunion. From the tears that fell to the ground, humankind was born fragile, fleeting, yet carrying within them the spark of the divine. Together Shu and Tefnut brought forth the next generation, Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Geb lay beneath, firm and fertile, while Nut arched above, her body jeweled with stars. At first they clung to each other in a passionate embrace, earth and sky locked together. No light, no air, no space existed between them. But Adam commanded Shu, the air, to push them apart. With infinite strength, Shu lifted Nut high above, stretching her body into the heavens. Geb cried out below, his laughter becoming earthquakes, his sorrow becoming rivers. And thus the world was formed, earth below, sky above, and air between. From chaos, order had arisen. From darkness, light. The gods had spoken the first words of existence, and creation had begun. In the beginning, when the first children of creation were born, they came as twins, Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Geb lay beneath, a vast body of soil and stone, his skin sprouting with green shoots, rivers coursing through his veins. Nut arched above him, her body endless and luminous, painted with stars that shimmered like jewels across her dark flesh. They loved one another deeply. In the silence of the newborn cosmos, earth and sky clung together in a timeless embrace. No light broke through, no space existed between them. Their union was unending, pressing everything beneath its weight, but the world could not grow in darkness. Adam, Lord of creation, saw that there was no place for life to breathe, no path for light to travel, no balance for order to thrive. He turned to his firstborn son, Shu, the god of air. "You are the breath between," Adam commanded. "You must push them apart. Only then will the world unfold." Shu trembled, for to separate brother from sister, lover from beloved, was to break the first bond of the universe. Yet he obeyed. With arms that spanned eternity, Shu placed his hands upon Nut's arching body and began to lift her upward. Nut cried out, her starry form stretching across the void. Geb groaned beneath, his body cracking with rivers, and trembling with earthquakes. Still, Shu pressed upward, straining with the burden of the heavens. At last Nut was lifted far above, arched like a celestial canopy over the weeping earth. Between them spread the air, the breath of all that would live. Light flooded the space for the first time. The sun blazed its golden fire across Nut's jeweled skin. Geb's body awakened with forests, deserts, and waters, fertile with the promise of life. Yet the lovers longed for each other still. Geb's arms stretched upward, mountains rising to touch his distant bride. Nut bent low, her starry hands and feet reaching for the earth below. But Shu held them apart, his body forever straining to keep balance between sky and land. From their sorrow came children 5 destined gods who would shape the fate of Egypt. Osiris, lord of the fertile earth and just ruler. Isis, goddess of magic and protector of kings. Seth, god of chaos and storms. Nephthys, shadowed guardian of the dead. Horus the elder, god of the endless skies. Thus the stage was set. Love, separation, sorrow, and destiny woven into the fabric of the world itself. The heavens glittered above, the earth sighed below, and mankind, born from the tears of Adam, would live forever beneath the gaze of gods. In the age when the gods still walked among men, Osiris ruled the land of Egypt. He was a just and noble king, his voice like flowing water, his presence bringing abundance wherever he stepped. The Nile rose in his honor, the fields flourished, and mankind prospered beneath his gentle rule. At his side stood Isis, his queen, sister, and consort. She was the mistress of magic, the great enchantress whose wisdom surpassed all others. Together they were the heart of Egypt. Osiris, the life-giving king, Isis, the guardian and healer. But envy shadows even the brightest throne. From the desert winds came Seth, brother to Osiris, lord of chaos, storms, and violence. Seth watched his brother's glory with bitterness burning in his heart. Why should Osiris, soft and beloved, rule Egypt, while he, fierce and strong, was cast into the red lands of dust and hunger? Seth's jealousy hardened into hatred. He devised a cunning plan. At a great feast, Seth unveiled a magnificent chest crafted of cedar and inlaid with precious gold, its beauty dazzling all who saw it. With feigned generosity, Seth announced, "Whoever fits perfectly within this chest shall keep it as his own." One by one the guests tried, laughing as they lay within, yet none matched its shape. At last Osiris, unsuspecting, lowered himself inside. The chest closed around him, like a lover's embrace. It had been measured for his very form. In an instant, Seth and his followers slammed the lid shut, sealed it with molten lead, and hurled it into the Nile. The river swallowed the coffin, carrying Osiris away into darkness. Egypt mourned. Isis, stricken with grief, wandered the land searching for her husband. Her tears flooded the fields, her cries echoed through villages. She was relentless queen, goddess, and widow on a sacred quest. At last she found the chest washed ashore in Byblus, encased within the trunk of a great tree that had grown around it. With devotion and cunning, Isis reclaimed the coffin and brought it home. But Seth's fury was not quenched. He discovered the body of Osiris and, in a rage of madness, tore him into 14 pieces, scattering them across Egypt so no resurrection could bind him again. Yet Isis did not despair. With tireless resolve she searched every corner of the land, collecting the fragments of her beloved. Each town that received a piece became sacred, a shrine marking Osiris's presence. Through her magic, Isis reassembled her husband's body. She breathed life into him for a single night. In that fleeting union she conceived a son, Horus, destined to avenge his father and reclaim the throne. Osiris could not remain among the living. Though resurrected, he descended into the underworld, becoming Lord of the Dead, ruler of the silent fields where souls would be judged for eternity. Thus Egypt knew. Osiris was not lost, but transformed. Isis was the eternal mother, the embodiment of love and magic. Horus was the avenger, the falcon-eyed heir. And Seth, the usurper, still roamed, waiting to clash with the son of the murdered king. It was not the end. It was the beginning of a war that would shape the destiny of gods and men alike. After Osiris descended into the underworld, Egypt was left in shadow. His murderer Seth proclaimed himself king. He ruled with a hand of iron, his storms sweeping across the desert, his chaos seeping into the fertile lands. Fear spread among men, for the just reign of Osiris was gone. But Isis was not defeated. In secret she hid deep in the marshes of the Nile Delta, far from Seth's searching eyes. There, among papyrus thickets and buzzing insects, she gave birth to Horus, the falcon-headed child of destiny. Horus was fragile, an infant threatened by every danger, the scorpions of the swamp, the serpents of chaos, and the wrath of Seth, who longed to crush the air before he could grow. Yet Isis, with her spells and cunning, guarded him. She called upon the 7 sacred scorpions to protect her child. She whispered incantations over his cradle, weaving magic stronger than steel. As Horus grew, his eyes shone like twin suns, his wings stretched wide with the promise of flight. He trained for vengeance, his heart burning with the memory of his father's murder. The trial of the gods. When Horus came of age, he challenged Seth before the Ennead, the council of the gods. Re, Thoth, and others gathered to judge who should rule Egypt, the usurper who already held power, or the rightful son of Osiris. The trial stretched on for 80 years. Arguments, debates, and contests filled the ages. Seth boasted of his strength, claiming that only he could defend Arai from the serpent Apophis each night. Horus answered that bloodline and justice demanded his inheritance. At times the council wavered. Ra, wearied by Seth's flattery, sometimes favored him. Isis, cunning and relentless, plotted to turn the tide. Disguised as a beautiful woman, she tricked Seth into condemning himself, drawing from him an admission that the rightful heir must inherit his father's throne. When Seth realized her deception, his rage knew no bounds. The battles of Horus and Seth, words gave way to war. Horus and Seth clashed across land, water, and sky. Their battles shook the very earth. In the Nile, they transformed into hippopotamuses, thrashing for days beneath the waves. On land, Seth tore out Horus's eye, blinding him with fury. Yet Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, restored the eye with healing magic. That sacred eye of Horus became the symbol of protection and power for all eternity. In another contest, Seth violated Horus, seeking to humiliate him. But Horus, cunning, turned the act into Seth's disgrace, proving before the gods that the Chaos Bringer could never claim dominance. The battles raged on, each clash more brutal than the last. The verdict at last, the Ennead grew weary of endless strife. They turned to Neith, the goddess of war and wisdom, who declared, The throne of Egypt belongs to Horus, son of Osiris. Seth shall have the desert, the red land where chaos dwells. But Egypt, the black land of life, belongs to the Falcon King. So it was decreed. Horus, crowned with the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, ascended the throne as rightful king. His reign restored balance, and he became the eternal symbol of kingship. Every pharaoh who ruled thereafter was seen as the living Horus, protector of Egypt, heir of Osiris. Seth, furious but bound, retreated to his desert storms. Osiris remained lord of the underworld, and the cycle of life, death, and rebirth became the eternal law of Egypt. The sun blazed high over Egypt, yet Re, the great god of the sun, grew weary. He had ruled for countless ages, guiding the world across the sky in his solar bark, but mankind had grown restless. They whispered in the shadows, plotting rebellion against their father and creator. Ra has grown old, they said. He is weak, his power fading. Why should we worship him any longer? Ra heard their words, and his heart filled with fury. He summoned the Ennead, the council of gods, to decide mankind's fate. The gods asked, "What shall be done? Shall we destroy those who scorn the one who gave them life?" Ra's eyes blazed like fire. From his very being, he released his eye, a fragment of his divine wrath. The eye descended to earth as a lion-headed goddess, Sekhmet, the bloodthirsty warrior. The reign of Sekhmet roared into the land of Egypt, her claws dripping with divine fire. She hunted mankind without mercy, her laughter echoing over the fields. Villages burned, rivers turned red, and the Nile's waters ran thick with blood. Men and women fled, but none could escape. Sekhmet devoured them as prey, her fury endless, her hunger insatiable. Ra looked down upon the carnage. At first he was pleased, for mankind had been punished for their arrogance. But as the days passed, his heart grew heavy. The destruction did not cease. Sekhmet's rage had become her nature. She would not stop until every human soul was gone. The trick of the red beer. Fearing the end of his creation, Re devised a plan to save mankind from his own wrath. He commanded his priests to brew vast quantities of beer, mixing it with red ochre until it glowed like blood. The Nile carried the crimson flood across the fields where Sekhmet hunted. When the goddess came upon it, she thought it was the blood of her victims. She bent low, drank deeply, and drank again. The beer filled her belly, clouding her mind. Sekhmet staggered, her eyes blazing, her roar turning to laughter. Soon she collapsed, drunken and pacified. Her fury was quenched. When she awoke, she was no longer Sekhmet the destroyer, but Hathor, goddess of love, joy, and music. Mankind was spared. The lesson of the eye. But the story was remembered as a warning. The gods are not bound by mortal mercy. Their love can turn to wrath, their protection to annihilation. For the Egyptians, every festival of Hathor carried the memory of Sekhmet, the day when the world nearly ended in blood, and was saved only by the cunning of Ar. When a man died in ancient Egypt, his journey was not ended. Death was only the beginning of a passage through the shadowed halls of the Duat, the underworld. The soul of the dead, called the Ba, rose from the tomb like a bird with a human face, and began its perilous journey toward the Hall of Mat, the chamber of ultimate judgment. The Hall of Mat. The hall was vast, its ceiling painted with stars, its floor echoing with the steps of countless souls who had passed before. At the center sat Osiris, lord of the underworld, his skin green as rebirth, his crown tall and white, the crook and flail across his chest. At his side stood his sisters, Isis and Nephthys, guardians of the throne. Before him stretched the great scales of justice, gleaming with divine light. Beside the scales stood Anubis, jackal-headed god of embalming, calm and silent, guiding the soul to its trial. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, held his reed pen, ready to record the verdict. And lurking in the shadows crouched Ammit, the devourer, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, waiting hungrily for the damned. The judgment, the soul stepped forward. Anubis led him to the scales. Upon one side was placed his heart, the seat of his conscience and memory. Upon the other lay the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. The hall fell silent. The balance wavered. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was declared pure. Osiris welcomed him into the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal harvests, where family and loved ones were reunited in joy. But if the heart was heavy with sin, weighed down by lies and cruelty, the scales tipped. At once Ammit lunged forward and devoured the heart whole. That soul ceased to exist, erased, annihilated, denied eternity. There was no second chance, no escape, only truth or oblivion. The negative confession. Before the weighing, the dead recited the negative confession, a list of 42 declarations, proclaiming their innocence. I have not stolen. I have not killed unjustly. I have not defiled the Nile. I have not lied. I have not caused pain without cause. Each denial was a shield, a plea that the heart would prove light. The eternal law for the Egyptians, this was not mere myth. It was the eternal law. Life was a preparation for judgment. Every action, every lie, every kindness weighed upon the heart. Kings and peasants alike would stand before Osiris. Wealth could not bribe the scales. Power could not sway the feather. Only Mat, truth, justice, balance could grant eternal life. When the fury of Sekhmet was quenched by the red beer, the lioness awoke transformed. Her claws no longer dripped with blood. Her eyes no longer burned with fire. Instead, laughter rose from her lips, soft as music, and her heart overflowed with joy. Thus she became Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, music, and the pleasures of life. The Lady of the Sycamore. Hathor was often seen as a great cow, her horns cradling the sun disk, her milk nourishing gods and men alike. In the groves of sycamore trees, she was worshipped as the Lady of the Sycamore, giving shade and water to the dead as they journeyed into eternity. She was the mother of tenderness, the one who welcomed souls into the afterlife with music and song. The festival of drunkenness. Yet her wild nature was never forgotten. Each year, Egyptians celebrated the festival of drunkenness, drinking beer dyed red in memory of the day humanity was nearly destroyed. By drinking until they lost themselves, they honored both aspects of Hathor, joy and fury, passion and destruction. The goddess of distant lands, but Hathor was also the wanderer. Legends tell of the time she grew angry with Re and fled into the deserts and foreign lands, taking the form of a lioness once more. Without her, the world fell into despair. The gods begged her to return. Thoth, the wise one, tricked her with clever words and songs, leading her back to Egypt. When she returned, joy blossomed again, and the Nile surged with fertility. Hathor was both gentle and dangerous, both mother and destroyer. To the Egyptians she was proof that love and passion, unchecked, could be as perilous as any weapon. If Hathor was the great cow of love, then Bastet was the silent feline of the night. In earliest times Bastet was fierce, a lioness of blazing fury. But as the centuries passed, she softened, becoming the sleek, mysterious cat goddess beloved in every home of Egypt. The guardian of the home Bastet prowled the houses of mortals, protecting families from snakes, scorpions, and unseen spirits. Cats became sacred in her honor, their every stretch and purr seen as a fragment of her divine grace. Yet beneath her gentle form lay the memory of the lioness. She could still unleash her wrath when provoked, tearing down enemies with claws swift as the desert wind. The Lady of Bubastis. Her temple at Bubastis was among the most joyous in Egypt. Festivals in her honor drew thousands down the Nile, singing, dancing, drinking, and celebrating until the riverbanks shook with merriment. To her worshippers, Bastet was not just a goddess, she was a companion, a presence in every hearth, every corner where a cat's eyes gleamed in the firelight. In the stillness between gods of passion and fury stood Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing. He was the scribe of the gods, the keeper of knowledge, the one who gave mankind the gift of writing itself. His pen decided the outcome of the weighing of the heart, recording truth without favor. His words shaped law, order, and the very spells that bound the cosmos. The maker of time. Thoth was the one who measured the heavens, counted the stars, and ordered the months. Without him, the Nile's floods would come without rhythm, and chaos would rule the calendar. It was said he even gambled with the moon goddess to gain extra days, so that Nut might give birth to her 5 children, Osiris, Isis, Seth, Nephthys, and Horus the Elder. Thus Thoth bent time itself for the sake of creation, the mediator in every conflict of gods, whether the trial of Horus and Seth, or the pleas of Re Thoth was the mediator, the voice of reason. Never swayed by rage or passion, he held balance through wisdom, proving that knowledge itself was divine. Every evening, as the blazing sun dipped beyond the horizon, Ra, the great sun god, began his perilous descent. By day he sailed across the heavens in his shining bark, bringing light and life to the world. But at night his vessel turned and slipped into the dark mouth of the western horizon, entering the shadowed realms of the underworld, the Duat. The Duat was no gentle place. It was a realm of twisting rivers, caverns of fire, gates guarded by monstrous beings and endless shadows, where the unworthy dead cried out. Here dwelled dangers that even the gods feared. Yet Re was not alone. Each night he was accompanied by a divine crew, Seal, the personification of perception, guiding with wisdom, Heka, the power of magic itself, guarding with spells, and most fearsome of all Set, the god of storms and chaos, paradoxically loyal in this one duty, for only his strength could battle the greatest enemy of all. The serpent of chaos, lurking in the waters of the Duat, was Apophis Apep, the monstrous serpent of endless night. Its coils stretched for miles, its fangs dripping with venom, its very breath able to extinguish the stars. Apophis was the eternal enemy, seeking to devour Are and plunge the cosmos back into eternal darkness. Each night the serpent struck. It rose from the abyss, jaws wide enough to swallow the bark of Ai whole. The waters churned, the stars quivered, and all creation trembled. The crew of Ra fought back with spells, blades, and fire, but it was Set, standing at the prow, who met the beast head-on. With a spear of flame he struck Apophis again and again, piercing its coils, holding it at bay until dawn approached. The serpent was never destroyed, for Apophis was chaos itself, endless, eternal. But each night he was defeated, driven back, bound by chains of magic until the next sunset. The renewal of the sun. At the end of his journey, Ra reached the eastern horizon. There, in the caverns of rebirth, he merged with Osiris, lord of the underworld. From Osiris he drew strength, the endless cycle of death and resurrection. Reborn as Khepri, the scarab beetle that rolls the sun into the sky, Ra emerged once more into the morning light. The world rejoiced as the first rays broke the darkness. The Nile glistened, birds sang, and mankind knew the eternal truth. Every dawn was a victory. Every sunrise, proof that order had triumphed over chaos, if only for another day. Before the world, before gods or men, before even light itself, there was only Nun, the infinite waters of chaos. Nun was endless, dark, silent. Within it lay the potential of all things, sleeping, waiting to awaken. From these waters, something stirred. A spark of existence rose above the flood. Adam, the self-created one, who came forth upon the first mound of earth that emerged from the deep. The birth of Shu and Tefnut Adam was alone, but he carried within himself all creation. He brought forth Su, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. Some say he spat them into being. Others say he shed them from his body, or that he spoke their names, and thus they existed. Shu lifted the endless sky. Tefnut gave the world water and fertility. Together they began to shape the cosmos. The children lost and found, yet when Shu and Tefnut wandered into the waters of Nun, they were lost in the darkness. Adam's heart ached with loneliness, and he sent out his eye, the eye of Ra, fiery and unblinking, to seek them. When they returned, he wept tears of joy. From those tears that fell upon the earth, mankind was born. Geb and Nut. From Shu and Tefnut came Geb, the earth god, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. They loved each other fiercely, locked together in an endless embrace. But Adam grew displeased. The world could not take shape while sky and earth were entwined. So Shu, their father, forced them apart, lifting Nut high above as the heavens, pressing Geb down as the soil. Thus the space of the world was created, the realm between sky and earth where life would flourish. The children of Nut, though separated from her beloved, gave birth to 5 great gods, each destined to shape the destiny of the cosmos. Osiris, lord of life and the afterlife. Isis, mistress of magic. Seth, lord of storms and chaos. Nephthys, goddess of twilight. Horus the elder, the falcon of the skies. Their birth was only possible because Thoth, the god of wisdom, tricked the moon into yielding 5 extra days beyond the calendar of Ea, and so the stage was set. From chaos came order, from loneliness came family, from the waters of Nun came the eternal cycle of creation. The everlasting balance to the Egyptians, creation was not a single moment in the past. It was a cycle renewed each day when Re rose from the horizon, each year when the Nile flooded, each life when the soul was reborn. The gods did not merely create the world, they sustained it endlessly against the threat of chaos. The goddess Isis, widow of Osiris and mother of Horus, wandered the land in secret. Her husband had been slain, her child hunted by Seth, the usurper. To keep Horus safe, she traveled disguised as a mortal woman, carrying her son close, guided by whispers of magic. But Isis was never alone. With her walked 7 scorpions, guardians fierce and loyal. They were sent to her by Selket, the scorpion goddess, to protect her and the divine child. Their names were ancient, hissed like venom. Tefn, Befn, Mestet, Mestitef, Betet, Thedet, and Matet. The rejection one evening, weary and hungry, Isis sought shelter in the house of a wealthy woman. But when the lady saw the ragged stranger at her door, with a child and a trail of scorpions, she recoiled in disgust. She slammed the door, leaving Isis in the dust of the road. Anger flared among the scorpions. Shall we suffer this insult? Shall the goddess, the mother of Horus, be turned away like a beggar? In silence they crept into the house of another woman, a poor villager who welcomed Isis with kindness, offering her bread and water, though she had little herself. The scorpion's sting. That night the 7 scorpions gathered their fury. 6 gave their venom to the 7th, Tefn, who grew swollen with deadly poison. He crawled into the wealthy woman's house, stung her child, and left him burning with fever, his breath shallow, death close at hand. The woman's screams echoed through the village. She clutched her son, begging for help. The spell of Isis heard the cries and rose. Though she had been insulted, though her son had been denied shelter, her heart was filled not with vengeance, but with compassion. She knelt beside the dying child, placed her hands upon him, and spoke the words of power. Fall away, poison. Depart, venom. I am Isis, mistress of spells. I command you in the name of Re. I drive you forth in the name of Horus. The poison fled. The boy stirred, his breath returned, his eyes opened. He lived. The lessened shame burned in the heart of the wealthy woman. She had spurned the goddess, and it was the poor woman who had shown true kindness. Isis forgave, but the tale spread far and wide. Beware arrogance, for even the gods may walk the earth in humble form, and mercy is stronger than vengeance. The solar voyage through the duet every evening, as the fiery disk of the sun sank into the horizon, the people of Egypt knew it was not gone. The sun god Ra was beginning his perilous journey through the duet, the vast, shadowed underworld that stretched beneath the earth. There, in the rivers of darkness, Re sailed in his solar bark, accompanied by a crew of gods and spirits. His voyage was not rest, but war, for each night he faced enemies that sought to end the cycle of dawn forever. The companions of Re-On, his boat stood the faithful, Sia, the personification of perception, who saw all hidden dangers, Heka, the god of magic, whose spells guarded against the forces of chaos, Maat, the goddess of truth and balance, whose presence kept the bark aligned with order, Set, the storm god, fierce and violent, chosen for his strength to fend off the greatest enemy. For though Set was hated for the murder of Osiris, here he became necessary. Only his raw power could strike against the serpent of chaos, Apophis, the serpent of the deep. In the deepest hours of the night, the great serpent Apophis, Apep, rose from the waters of Nun. Colossal, endless, with scales darker than night, his eyes blazed with hatred. He coiled around the bark, seeking to devour Ra and plunge creation back into eternal chaos. The crew trembled, but Set rose. With a roar of thunder, he drove his spear into the serpent's flesh, pinning him, while the spells of Heka and the chants of the crew burned like fire against Apophis' coils. The triumph of dawn. Though Apophis could never be destroyed, chaos was eternal. Each night re-triumphed. The serpent was cut, bound, or blinded, and the bark sailed onward. At last the gates of the eastern horizon opened, and Ra emerged, reborn, blazing in the sky as the morning sun. Every dawn was proof of victory. Every sunrise was the world saved again from annihilation. The eternal battle, but the struggle never ended. Apophis would rise again the next night, coiling, waiting, hatred undiminished. And so the Egyptians believed. Order and chaos were locked in endless combat, and life itself depended on the daily triumph of the gods. Isis and the secret name of Ra was the greatest of gods, the blazing sun, father of creation. His light sustained the world, and his power was unmatched. But with age even the sun grew weary. His lips trembled, his flesh drooped, and from his mouth spilled drops of spittle upon the earth. The goddess Isis, wise and cunning, saw an opportunity. She longed for knowledge and power beyond measure, not for vanity, but to protect her son Horus in the eternal struggle against Seth. To do this, she sought the one thing that could command the universe, the secret name of Ra, the serpent of spells from the spittle of Ra. Isis molded clay and shaped it into a serpent. She spoke incantations, breathed life into the creature, and placed it upon the path where Ra walked each day. The serpent struck, sinking its fangs into the flesh of the sun god. Re cried out, a scream that shook heaven and earth. Fire burned through his veins. None of the other gods could heal him, for the venom was born of his own essence, and no cure could be found. The bargain. Isis came to Rhea, feigning innocence, but offering aid. "Tell me your secret name, O great Ra," she said, "for only by your true name can I weave the spell that drives out the poison." Ra resisted. He spoke of his power, his titles, his deeds, but Isis shook her head. "Your titles are many, your glory vast, but your true name lies hidden within. Speak it, and I shall save you." In agony, Ra yielded. He whispered his hidden name into the ears of Isis. In that moment, his power flowed into her, for to know the true name of a god was to command his essence. The healing with the knowledge of the name, Isis spoke words of power. The venom dissolved, the serpent vanished, and Ra was healed. But things were never the same. Though Re remained the sun, master of the skies, Isis now held part of his secret strength. She became the most powerful goddess of magic, second to none. The legacy of power from that day forth, Isis was revered not only as mother and mourner, but as mistress of magic, she who held the hidden truths. Her knowledge would protect Horus, aid the dead, and preserve Egypt itself. Yet this tale whispered a deeper truth to the Egyptians. Even the greatest of gods had weaknesses, and wisdom, cunning, and words of power could rival brute strength or divine authority. Mat, the feather of truth, in the beginning, when Re rose from the waters of Nun, he did not rise alone. Alongside him came Mat, the goddess of truth, justice, and harmony. She was no warrior with sword or shield. She carried only a single ostrich feather, light and pure, yet it was mightier than chaos itself. The essence of Mat to the Egyptians, Mat was not only a goddess but a principle, the very law that kept the cosmos in balance. Without her, the heavens would collapse, the Nile would fail to flood, families would fall to greed, and kings would rule with tyranny. Pharaohs swore their legitimacy by her name. Each morning Ray placed Mat before him in his bark, for only with her presence could the sun cross the sky. The scales of judgment. But Mat's greatest role lay in the Hall of Two Truths, where every soul came after death. There the heart of the deceased was placed upon scales. On the other side lay Mat Sea Feather. If the heart was light, free of sin, it balanced with the feather, and the soul was welcomed into the eternal fields of reeds. If heavy with lies, greed, or cruelty, the scales sank, and the monstrous Ammit, devourer of the dead, consumed the soul forever. No army could save a man then, no wealth could bribe the scales. Only Mat decided. The eternal struggle, the enemies of Re-Seth, Apophis, and the forces of chaos were not only threats to gods, but to Mat herself. Every battle of light against darkness, every judgment in the underworld, every law pronounced by the king was part of the same struggle, to preserve Ma'at and repel Isfet, chaos, falsehood, injustice. The human duty, the Egyptians believed they too were guardians of Mat, to feed the hungry, to honor the gods, to speak the truth, to act with fairness. These were not mere virtues, but cosmic duties. When a peasant argued before a corrupt official, he could cry out, "Give me Mat, for Mat is great, and it endures. It has not been disturbed since the time of the god Re." In this way, even the humblest soul shared in the eternal defense of the cosmos. The feather that sustains the world, thus the myths taught. Swords may break, temples may fall, dynasties may vanish, but as long as Mat endured, the world would endure. Her feather was small, yet it bore the weight of heaven and earth. Ptah, the god who created with thought, while Re blazed across the sky, and Adam birthed the first gods from his own flesh. Another tale was told in the city of Memphis. There the craftsmen and builders worshipped Ptah, Lord of creation. But unlike Adam or Re, Ptah did not create with blood or fire. He created with the heart and the tongue, the craftsman of the cosmos. To the Memphite priests, Ptah was the divine artisan, the master builder, who shaped the cosmos as if it were a temple. He thought of the world in his heart. He spoke its names upon his tongue, and with each word, what he envisioned came into being. This was the Memphite theology, a universe born not of violence, but of mind and speech. Patron of artists and builders, stonecutters, blacksmiths, and architects prayed to Ptah, for he was their protector. Every statue carved, every temple raised, every piece of jewelry forged was seen as an echo of Ptah's first creation. His temple at Memphis became one of the greatest sanctuaries in Egypt, home to the sacred bull Apis, who embodied Ptah's life force on earth. The silent power of Ptah did not fight serpents in the dark, nor weave serpents from clay, nor weigh the hearts of men. He was a quieter god, one who worked in silence, shaping destiny with thought and word. But to the wise he was among the greatest, for he revealed a truth deeper than myth, that creation itself is an act of mind and speech. Khonsu, the traveler of the night sky, when the sun god Ra descended into the duat, another light took his place above, the pale, silvery glow of the moon. This was Khonsu, the youthful god of the moon, son of Amen and Mut of Thebes. The lunar power, Khonsu's name, meant the traveler, for he moved through the sky like a celestial wanderer. He was not only a light in the night, but also a healer. His gentle rays were thought to cure the sick, soothe the restless, and guide the lost. Priests told stories of his battles against demons of darkness. They feared his anger, for Khonsu could also consume those who defied cosmic order, devouring their hearts like a predator in the night. The healer of Thebes. At Karnak in Thebes, Khonsu was worshipped as a bringer of health. Foreign rulers sent offerings to him, believing his power could heal disease. One legend tells of a princess of Bedtime who fell ill. Her father prayed to the gods of Egypt, and Khonsu's statue was set across deserts and mountains. When it arrived, the princess rose cured. The eternal youth. Though lesser known than Osiris, Khonsu symbolized renewal. Each month, as the moon waned and vanished, Egyptians believed he traveled through the Duat. When the moon returned, he was reborn, an eternal cycle of death and regeneration, mirroring the fate of all souls. Montu, the falcon of war, when the Nile ran red with the blood of battle, and the clash of bronze echoed across the desert, the Egyptians raised their eyes not to Ra, nor to Osiris, but to Montu, the falcon-headed god of war. Montu was not a gentle deity. He was the scorching desert wind, the fury of the stallion, the unstoppable strength of the warrior's arm. To invoke him was to summon the madness of combat and the fire of victory. The face of the warrior Montu was often shown as a falcon with a sun disk and two tall plumes, crowned with a uraeus serpent. Sometimes he carried the curved sword Kapish, symbol of destruction in battle. Where Re gave light, Montu gave fire. His name alone meant nomad, striker, rager, the patron of pharaohs. During the Middle Kingdom and into the New Kingdom, pharaohs declared themselves mighty bulls of Montu. To them he was not only a god, but a patron of kingship in war, the divine embodiment of their courage, the roar in their throats, the terror in their enemies' eyes. The great conqueror Thutmose III was often called a valiant Montu on the battlefield. Ramses II, in his inscriptions, compared himself to Montu when describing his charge at the Battle of Kadesh. Temples of Fire Montu was worshipped in Hermonthis, Ermont, near Thebes, where grand temples rose to his name. There, priests described him as the raging bull, sharp of horns, lord of carnage. Yet within his sanctuaries, Montu was not always destructive. Just as a warrior could rest his sword, so too Montu could bless the land with protection, ensuring Egypt's enemies never threatened its peace. The charioteer of the gods, in later times Montu was depicted riding in a chariot, drawn by fierce steeds. He was believed to charge ahead of Egyptian armies, scattering foes, breaking their lines, and filling their hearts with terror before the first spear was even thrown. Thus Montu was not just a god of brute force, he was strategy, swiftness, and the terrifying momentum of war. Legacy of the war god. Though he was eventually overshadowed by Ammon in Thebes, Montu's name endured as a symbol of victory. In times of crisis, Egyptians prayed not only for life and rebirth, but for the raw, unstoppable might of the falcon of war. Montu was the truth of battle, beautiful and terrible, glorious and bloody, the flame that consumed but also defended. Anubis, guardian of the dead in the stillness of the necropolis, where silence weighs heavier than stone, a figure with the head of a jackal walks among the tombs. This is Anubis, Inpu, in the ancient tongue, the dark guardian of the dead, master of embalming, protector of the sacred transition from life to eternity. The jackal of the desert. The jackal haunted the edges of Egyptian villages, seen prowling cemeteries at night. To the Egyptians, this scavenger was not a sign of fear, but of power, the perfect form for the god who watched over graves. Anubis bore the sleek black head of the jackal, symbol of death, but also of rebirth, the black of fertile Nile silt that promised new life. Lord of embalming. It was Anubis who first embalmed a body, that of Osiris, slain by Seth and restored by Isis. With careful hands, he wrapped the god in linen, uttering spells that preserved flesh and spirit alike. From that moment, every act of mummification echoed his divine work. Priests who embalmed the dead were called servants of Anubis, donning masks of the jackal to channel his sacred role. The guide of souls. Anubis was not a judge that was Osiris's throne, but he was the one who guided the soul to the hall of two truths, steadying them through their terror, leading them to the scales. With calm authority, he placed the heart of the deceased upon the balance against the feather of mat. If the scales held true, he led the soul forward. If not, he stood aside as Ammit devoured it. Anubis did not rejoice in judgment. He was impartial, a guide rather than an executioner. His role was not to punish, but to ensure the truth was revealed. Protector of the tombs carved deep into cliffs, pyramids rising into the sky, hidden burials in the sands, all called upon Anubis for protection. Thieves, desecrators, and enemies of the dead were warned. To disturb a tomb was to face the wrath of the jackal god. Even pharaohs feared that without his blessing, their resting places would not endure. Thus prayers to Anubis lined the walls of sarcophagi. O Anubis, Lord of the Holy Land, watch over me, guard my body, guide my soul. The Eternal Watcher. Though Osiris rose as the great judge of the underworld, Anubis never faded. In quiet dignity, he remained the one who touched every death, every burial, every crossing between worlds. For the Egyptians, death was not chaos, but transition, and Anubis was the keeper of that passage, the silent guardian who never slept. His nightly voyage through the Duat. When the sun set behind the western horizon, the world did not fall silent. It was then that the greatest journey of all began, the nightly voyage of a Lord of the Sun through the Duat, the vast and terrifying realm of the dead. The solar bark, as dusk fell, Ra descended into the underworld aboard his golden bark, accompanied by gods, spirits, and guardians. Each hour of the night was a realm, a gate, a trial. Priests told of 12 caverns through which he passed, one for every hour of darkness. On his ship stood divine companions. Sial, the personification of perception and divine knowledge. Heka, the power of magic itself. Ma'at, seated at the prow, for even in the realm of shadows, truth must guide the way. The realms of night. The Duat was no silent land. It was filled with lakes of fire, rivers of darkness, and caverns where serpents as wide as temples writhed. The dead awaited judgment. Demons stalked the shadows, and the guardians of gates demanded passwords only the gods could speak. Each hour brought new perils. In one, Re passed through fields where blessed souls thrived in peace. In another, he sailed over waters teeming with monstrous crocodiles. In the deepest hours, his bark crossed vast abysses where no mortal could ever survive. The battle with Apophis, but the most dreaded moment came each night when the colossal serpent Apophis Apep rose from the void. Its body stretched longer than rivers, its scales gleamed with venom, its eyes burned with hate. Apophis sought one thing, to devour the sun, to plunge creation back into the chaos of none. The gods on the bark stood ready. Seth wielded his spear. Others cast spells, while Re summoned the blazing fire of his eye. The battle shook the Duat, thundered through the earth, and raged until Apophis was cut apart, scattered, yet never destroyed. For each dawn he would rise again, the triumph of dawn. At the 12th hour, Ra emerged victorious, his bark passing through the body of a great serpent of light, symbol of rebirth. The gates of the eastern horizon opened, and the sun rose anew, golden and radiant, scattering the last shadows of night. But the cycle was eternal. Each evening the journey would begin again. Victory was never final, nor defeat permanent, only the endless balance, the eternal struggle of light against darkness. The meaning of the voyage for the Egyptians, this myth was not just about the sun, it was about life itself. Every death was a setting sun, every burial a descent into the Duat. But like Re, the soul could emerge reborn, if it endured the trials, if it triumphed over chaos. Thus each sunrise was more than light. It was proof that order had triumphed once more, that life endured, that hope was eternal. The Book of Gates, the soul's journey beyond death. The sun was not the only traveler through the Duat. Every human soul, once freed from the body, had to walk its own path through the underworld, facing the same gates and guardians that Re encountered each night. This journey was mapped in sacred texts, painted on tomb walls and coffins, known to us as the Book of Gates, the 12 Gates of Night. The Duat was imagined as divided into 12 sections, each sealed by a mighty gate. At every threshold stood fierce guardians, serpents, demons, or gods, each demanding a name, a spell, a truth. To pass, the soul had to recite the correct words, for in the Duat, knowledge was power. Without it, the gates would never open, and the traveler would be lost forever. The judgment of the dead. The journey was not only about passage, but about truth. At the deepest heart of the Duat stood the Hall of Two Truths, where the soul faced judgment. The heart was weighed against the feather of Mat. Anubis guided the weighing, his hand steady. Thoth recorded the result, his pen scratching destiny into eternity. Osiris presided on his throne, flanked by Isis and Nephthys. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was declared Mak-Hrut, and allowed to join the company of the blessed. If heavy with sin, it was cast to Amit the devourer, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, the terror of obliteration. The fields of reeds for the righteous, the journey did not end in shadow, but in light. Beyond the gates lay the field of reeds, a perfect reflection of Egypt itself. Fertile lands, flowing waters, eternal harvests. Here the blessed dead lived in peace, plowing fields, embracing loved ones, and worshiping the gods. They did not live in idleness, for the Egyptians believed eternity required purpose, but their labor was joyous and their days endless. The cosmic mirror. The Book of Gates was more than funerary spells. It was a mirror of the cosmos. The soul's journey reflected Rea's voyage. The same 12 gates, the same trials, the same triumph over chaos. Every sunrise was proof that the dead could rise, just as the sun did, if they too passed the tests of the underworld. The terror and the promise for the Egyptians, death was never final. It was a journey, a perilous voyage through serpents, fire, and judgment. But it was also a promise that beyond the terror, beyond the silence, lay eternity. And at every dawn, when Ra's light broke the horizon, the people knew the truth of their faith. that life, order, and rebirth would always conquer the abyss. The gods of Egypt were mighty, but their power was not infinite. Every being god, spirit, or mortal was bound by the truth of their Ren, the secret name that held their essence. To know a being's secret name was to hold its very life in your hands, and no name was greater than that of Ra, the sun god, king of the heavens. The ambition of Isis, mistress of magic, healer, and queen of wisdom, longed to protect her son Horus to ensure his throne against the chaos of Seth, but for that, she needed greater power only Ra himself possessed. So she conceived a plan, daring and dangerous. She would learn the secret name of Ra. The poisoned bite Wa was old, his body weary, though his light still filled the skies. One day, as he walked upon the earth, drool fell from his lips onto the ground. Isis gathered the spit of Re, mixed it with earth, and shaped it into a serpent. She laid it upon the path where Er would walk, and when he passed, the serpent struck, sinking venom deep into his flesh. The cry of the sun god, the great god, faltered. His body shook, his light dimmed, and his voice thundered across creation. What is this that has pierced me? What venom burns in my veins? Never has such pain touched me. The gods rushed to him, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, and Isis among them. But none could soothe his agony, for the serpent's poison was made not of earth alone, but of his own divine essence. Isis's bargain, Isis stepped forward, her voice calm yet unyielding. Ra, mighty one, only by speaking your secret name can this poison be expelled. Reveal it to me, and I shall heal you. Ra resisted. To give his name was to give his power. He recited many of his titles, his deeds, his glories, but not his true name. The venom burned hotter. His light flickered. Shadows spread across the world. At last, broken and desperate, Re whispered his secret name into Isis's ear. The triumph of magic in that instant, Isis held the greatest power of the cosmos. She spoke the words of healing, and the poison fled from Ra's body. The sun god rose again, shining as before, but never again was he supreme as he once had been. For Isis now possessed his essence. Through her cunning, she had become the most powerful goddess of magic, securing her son Horus's destiny to inherit the throne of Osiris. The lesson of the myth. This story was not merely about trickery. It was about knowledge as power. Even the mightiest gods could be undone, not by force, but by wisdom and strategy. To the Egyptians, magic, Heka, was not superstition, but a cosmic force as real as the rising sun. And Isis, through her mastery of it, became a figure of awe, the eternal queen of sorcery.